It's funny because I always think about when I first met you at Shutterstock, where we both used to work, and we were just like eating Cheez-Its and like drinking a lot. And it's like really beautiful to see how far we've come.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't thinking about the energy highways then.
Well, your energy highway was mostly a single Cheeto. Not a Cheeto, sorry, a
Cheez-It. Yeah.
Okay, well, I wanted to, like, it's funny because I think in general, me and you co-create all the time. So I'm trying not to like overthink the fact that there's like mics and a light, because even when we're just at the beach or whatever, we get to create together.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I want to hear, I know we already talked about it, but tell me about the sandcastle you built this morning.
Since I knew I was coming to Santa Monica and I live in Silver Lake, I was like, I'm going to go early, make the trip worth it. This would have been worth it, of course, but extra worth it. So I went to the beach, and I make a sandcastle almost every time I go to the beach. And I've been doing that since I was like a baby. Like my dad would make sandcastles with me, and I still do. And the same things happen every time. Like my hands get like raw and almost bleeding, or sometimes my knuckles do bleed. I always like lots of kids come up and talk to me every time. And sometimes concerned parents and yeah. And
oh my God, my foot's falling asleep.
Oh no. Yeah, it's just really fun. And it's you have to like sometimes a whole thing will just cave in because physics, or like a huge wave will just crash over it. So you're like constantly like adjusting based on what Mother Nature is doing. And as a kid, it used to frustrate me, but now I love it, and I try to lean into it and be like, okay, this is what I'm working. This whole wall is gone. Okay, how can I make this cool? I was actually starting to make this giant face, and because there's this natural like structure that was a great nose, and then I was digging around it, and the whole thing just fell off. So then I went to Castle. But yeah, I dug like a 6 feet hole down into the sand. And I did fill it in before I left because it is a safety hazard for children.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, you got to fill it in.
Got it.
Yeah, and then once I filled in the hole, the kids came and played with the castle when I was leaving. And it was cool. Yeah.
I feel like we both, well, you don't even live by the beach, but I think it's like a sacred place for you.
Yeah.
And it is for me too.
I think it's, well, and it is for a lot of people. And I think it's because like we came from the sea.
Yeah.
Like, that's where we crawled out of millions of years ago.
I feel like I'm like coming home.
Yeah.
When I'm in the water. We were at the beach. This was like, I don't even remember when we did this, but that day that we went hiking and then came back to your brother's place, and then we decided to do the cold plunge at his place.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys filmed me as you remember we kept calling it my LinkedIn white bro post?
Yes.
and then everybody was going to the beach after, and I wasn't going to go, but I was like, I'm just in a moment where I'm going to say yes. And then at the beach, we started talking about how the night before I had stayed up all night with this guy I had met. And Henry was like, oh, was he a good kisser? And I was like, yeah, I wouldn't stay up all night with somebody that wasn't a good kisser. And then you went home and wrote a song about it called Up All Night.
Yeah. Yeah, I always write down little sound bites that we say when we're talking to each other. And that like opened up a creative channel kind of. That was the first song I ever wrote on guitar.
Wait, say more. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so then I started, because I've been playing piano my whole life, and that's been my medium. But I had just started messing around with guitar because of my all night story. I was up all night as well. And yeah, I was just kind of dinking around, like finding something, at the time didn't know how to play it. So I was just kind of like seeing what sounded good and just messing with that line. You would not stay up all night with someone who didn't kiss you right. That's so hard. Rhythmic. Yeah. And it worked. And then I released it as a single, and it's my first vocal single that I've released.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's funny because I remember when I was telling you the other funny part of that story was I had a date with a girl later that day, and I really wanted him to leave my apartment because I was like, I need to clean. Like, there's a girl coming over. And Henry was like, it's so classic that you don't care that your apartment was dirty for this guy, but you of course care because you know she'll notice because you would notice.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You called it a very beautiful bi moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a beautiful queer moment.
What's been a beautiful queer moment for you?
A beautiful queer moment. I don't know. Ethan and I.
You're like, my life is a queer moment.
Yeah.
Or a gay moment.
Yeah. It was a series of many queer moments. Yeah. An endless collection. Yeah.
Like when Ethan put on my pink heels and he's like, these are doing something.
That was that was a queer moment for me. Yeah.
I was like, am I gay?
You were hitting a frequency.
Every time I go to Henry's house, we get in the hot tub and then I have to borrow clothes to go home in, and then I look the gayest whenever I'm leaving.
Yeah, wearing like my basketball shorts and a big tank top and
yeah. Well, so it's funny because I was writing down like stuff me and you share today when I was thinking about doing this interview, and one thing that's just like super random is we're both from Michigan. And so I wanted to ask you this because we've probably talked about it in the past, but I don't really remember. I wrote down like, what was it like to be a Michigan gay? And then I was realizing I don't remember if we've ever talked about that, or if we have talked about it, if it was significant to you at all, or if at this point it was just so long ago it doesn't matter.
No, there is a Michigan gay thing, or there was at least. And it was also part of the time period. Like I came out when I was a freshman in college, and yeah, to be gay then was like everyone was like kind of still dressing like a straight college guy, but like being gay in their sexual interactions, and but a very like kind of like trimmed, groomed version of like a straight guy. And that was, I don't know if it's still like that anymore. I haven't been a part of the Michigan gay scene since then. But like when I moved to New York, gay people were like, we're not going to dress like we're going to a frat party.
They're like, this is not a J. Crew fashion show.
Yeah. So yeah, like I remember going to Express at the mall and buying a shirt that was expensive. And to me, that was like being really gay, was going to Express to buy like a nice button-up shirt. And now I would never wear a button-up shirt from Express or give them money or like, yeah, I don't know what I'm saying.
No, that it's. I think, I mean, like you always say when I leave your house, you're like, as usual, you look a little bit gayer than when you got here. Like, I do think there is something about self-expression that makes you feel, I don't know, like different energetically in your own body. And then when we were younger, especially growing up in the Midwest, like we didn't control what we could buy really, because there was only a certain subset of options available.
Yeah. And I don't know what it's like in East Michigan, because I do think one of my favorite things to talk about.
The age-old debate, East Michigan versus West Michigan.
They're different things.
Thank you. There are different things. And whenever someone agrees with me on that they're different things, I'm like, thank you. Because to me, like, just like this past week, I met someone who was from Michigan, and he was like, where are you from? And I said, Grand Rapids. And he was like, oh, I'm from Dearborn. And he said, so different worlds. And I was like, yes, exactly.
And Dearborn is even its own specific subculture that's under East Michigan, but it's like a completely different thing because it's actually, I think, the largest Middle Eastern population outside of the Middle East in the country.
I've heard that, yeah.
I used to go there all the time when I was young because it's hard to explain it, but like all the signs are in Arabic, everybody's brown. Like even when you go to like a high school football game, everyone's just brown. Mm-hmm. And I think I just felt more like normal. And I don't think I realized that until maybe just now. But I just used to go there all the time. And they had like really cool tea shops and like hookah lounges. And it just felt, I don't know, more, and everybody like knew each other. Because that's the other thing about being, I don't know, of like a different country, I guess, even if you're first or second generation, is when you see other brown people, you just kind of feel like you know each other because you kind of do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shared experience. For sure.
It's a shared experience. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. For me growing up, I mean, I didn't like identify as anything. I was just like, oh, I think I'm straight, or it's not something I ever questioned.
Mm-hmm.
But from a young age, I was always really close friends with gay men. Like as soon as they would come out, or even before, they just tended to be who I was drawn towards. And I always wonder, like, is that because I subconsciously knew or sensed that they're not obsessed with this idea of traditional marriage? Like, you know what I mean? There was like something there that made me feel comfortable. I'll never know. It was just a thing. Mm-hmm.
I think you're just like an open person who doesn't get caught up in like, I think that when you come out as gay, especially in Michigan in like 2008 or something, like you are really like stepping outside of the culture, and you're someone who also doesn't like to be like confined by like accepted culture. So I feel like that's why you connect. That's
true.
And yeah, like most of my friends were like cool women when I lived in Michigan.
Yeah. Because I was like, why is everybody like this?
Yeah.
Like, but I couldn't, it's all you know. So then you don't know how to articulate like otherwise, I guess. And then high school is also a weird time because there's so much pressure to conform generally.
Yeah.
Like it's weird. And you don't realize it because it's all you know. But then college is different.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so great being in your 30s, right?
Like it's both simultaneously like challenging, but also like so much better because you just accept yourself more.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm finally coming around to the thing that I've been reading will happen, which is like the horrible experiences from high school where like someone was mean to you or someone didn't understand you or whatever. Like you realize now I'm appreciating all those moments because those like galvanized me over time to find out who I really am and be proud of that. Or yeah, just like so much of I've been realizing a lot that the way we were raised was just like everything you do has to be from extreme hard work. If you want anything good in this life, it has to require like huge sacrifice and toil and just like general, like that is, and then that's when you deserve like something that makes you happy, or like that's when you deserve being able to create what you want to create. Like, and that I didn't really start realizing that wasn't true until like 2 or 3 years ago. Because the more I've like stopped like thinking about what I deserve or whatever, the more I've just been happy, which then has made me create more.
Yeah.
And more freely and authentically.
You're like more in a flow state, or just like less like, well, and it also probably for both of us, or maybe everyone in the world, like you end up attracting the right people, whether that's like friends or romantic relationships or whatever, when you're in that state anyway, versus like fighting against all your intuition. Because then I think when you're fighting against intuition, it's like, then if you're doing that in a romantic relationship or a friendship, that feels normal. Like it's like, oh, relationships are all supposed to just be like super hard. And I know they can be, but.
Oh, you know? Yeah. We're all, I see. Yeah, totally. We're taught that relationships are like really hard work. And of course, like becoming an accomplished artist or being in a really good relationship does require lots of work, but it doesn't have to be horrible.
You can have fun doing that.
You can have fun, and you should seek out the fun way to do it. And just like staying open and curious, like that should be the driving like force, not like, am I miserable enough
Yeah.
for this to count?
Do you feel like, when did you move to LA?
2021, late 2021.
And what made you want to move?
It's not that interesting. Well, okay, I'll give you the interesting version.
Just give me the boring version. Huh?
No, I was living in Kingston, New York for a few years.
That's
right. And I was living there before COVID struck. but then as things were starting to come back to life, I was like, I want to be in a city again. I want to be like in a place where people are doing a lot of creation and collaborating a lot. So I wanted to go back to a city. So I was like, I'll probably go back to New York. But then I had a gig in Kennebunkport, Maine, which is, it doesn't matter where it is. And
Wait, that city name is amazing. Kennebunkport.
Kennebunkport. And I was playing a show there with Alan Cumming, and in the audience was Caroline Rhea, who is Aunt Hilda from Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which was my all-time favorite show when I was a kid. Like obsessed with Sabrina. And so I saw her in the audience, and I was like, after the show, I said, Alan, can you please introduce me to her? And she came backstage, and we hit it off right away. Next thing you know, we're all at dinner at her house the next day. And I was sitting next to her at the table, getting like fun stories about the mechanical cat and stuff like that. And then out of the blue, she said, I have a guest house in my place in LA. Do you want to come live in it? And I was like, I had not talked about going to LA ever. It was completely random. And I said, okay, yes, I'll move into your guest house. It was just a short-term thing, but that's why I moved, was because a magical figure from my childhood invited me to live with her.
How is that not exciting?
No, I remember.
I was going to be like, well, like, so I just like, that is the reason. Yeah.
I mean, you tend, because of like your nature, and actually it's one of my favorite things about you, you downplay like your life is magical because you just attract magical people because you're magical. But I think in your head you're like, oh, it's like whatever, it's fine. Like it just like happened. And I'm like, it didn't just happen.
Right. I think the reason I said it was uninteresting, it's kind of the thing we're breaking away from is like, what would I tell my parents why I'm moving? I'd be like, well, there's more opportunities there for me if I'm looking to go into this field. Like, that's what I was getting ready to say. And I was like, oh, wait, no, there actually is an interesting reason. And it's really magical and fun.
And it's like the real reason. I mean, people are like, what did you move for, like, work? I was like, no. I just like kept going there. And then I was like, I think I just want to move. And my original thing was I just felt much more connected when I was around mountains and the beach and like sun. And it just became, the last 3 years I was in New York, I couldn't stop thinking about it without knowing very much. Like, I really didn't know very many people here. And then I just kind of did it. Like, I was like, okay, it's the pandemic. Like, nothing matters. My story is actually kind of uninteresting, but it is funny how sometimes in some circles, when people asked why I moved, I'll just make up. I'll be like, oh, it just made sense for what I was doing. It's completely untrue. I didn't even know I was making a career transition. I just did it.
Oh,
it was a huge leap.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like to me, like you coming to LA ended up being something that amplified, like kind of
completely
direction. Similarly, like I feel like yours is like a internally, we're talking about energy channels. It's like an internally manifested thing that like someone, like a magical being from your childhood showed up and was like, hey, do you want to come live in LA? Like, that's incredible.
I know. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. When there's no traffic jams, then you're like, your receptors are like, and then those people are just like, walk right in.
And Caroline Ray's like, hey.
Yeah.
On Hilda. Well, it's really funny. So Henry and I, it might have been a year ago during Pride or maybe 2 years ago, but Henry and I were at the beach and I was in like basically pajamas and he's like, hey, do you want to go? He goes, do you want to go to this like drag show at the Orpheum? But I mean, yeah, I'm very much like a person who's like, sure, yes. I'm like, do I need to go home and change? But it was kind of out of the way. We'd have to go to my place in Santa Monica and then go downtown. And so we ended up just going to his place and making some chili. And then I borrowed like just like slightly better clothes than pajama clothes to go to the Orpheum.
Yeah, you looked like you were in a music video for like a 90s like punk group.
Yeah. I had no makeup on. I was in this thing. We get there. Caroline Rhea has our tickets. We're in the third row of this show and there's a red carpet. Everyone is in gowns. And Henry just looked at me and he goes, I'm so sorry.
But you were so great. You like committed. You were like, this is what I'm wearing.
Like,
and we were, since we were Caroline's guests, we were with like other celebrities. Like there was that lady, what is she from?
Schmidt from, what's his name? Max Green or Schmidt from New Girl was right in front of me.
Yes. And Melanie Griffith was 2 rows in front of us.
Oh my God.
Anyway, yeah, that was so
And
funny.
then and then Caroline had donated to the show. So at one point, the spotlight was just on our row because they were calling out all the people that had donated, and I was like, I can't believe I'm sitting in this row. It was honestly, it was a funny story, but in the moment, I was like, oh my God, like, this is a situation, and I felt like Caroline was just kind of like, who are you? Like,
Oh no, I'm sure she wasn't thinking about like.
yeah, maybe it was just in my head, but it was honestly it was a really good memory.
Oh yeah,
Specifically because not just the outfit, but also that we like ate that vegetarian chili right before.
Oh,
Yeah.
were you gassy?
No, but I felt like Kevin from The Office in that one episode where he like spills the chili, and I'm like, I love where this started. Like I'm like an hour ago I was like at the beach, and then half an hour ago I was eating vegetarian chili, and currently I'm sitting in. Well, I remember this one guy after the show was talking to me, and he's like, "You look like you just like went bowling."
A gay man said that to you? Yeah. Sorry. Sorry for putting you in that type of environment.
Honestly, it was a much better experience than if I had been properly dressed, because now I just remember it feeling silly.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it kind of took me out of my own head, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm here, and I can't believe Melanie Griffith is just like sitting here. Anyway, that was really funny. But I do like that it was another day that was just born out of us being at the beach watching your brother play tennis
Yeah.
at the beach. Like, should we just go to the show?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think another really cool show we recently went to, what was it called? Oh, Play-Doh.
Play-Doh.
We went to this show where, and I'm going to try to describe it, but jump in if you can do it better.
Okay.
It was this show where people were doing a mixture of interpretive dance and dialogue. And was there music?
Mm-hmm. Live music. Yeah.
And there was live music. And it was such like a beautiful performance. And the thing that I remember being so profound about it was that it's very rare that I'm watching something and I don't have this urge to go on my phone or be doing something else. And for the entire 2 or 3 hours, I couldn't look away.
Yeah. Yeah, that is how I felt too. And they were just like doing stuff that I have never even conceived in my mind, which is, and that's what I want to see more of. Just like people doing stuff that like, I've never thought of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think we just sadly live in an era of there's a lot of distraction. So it takes a lot more to hold our attention.
Most people like worship the altar of distraction, which is just like, you know, these shows that are made on Netflix that are basically just like, well, people seem to like coffee, people getting in fights, and people having sex. So what can we make with that? And then they just cobble together a story, and then they like throw a bunch of money, and then they pump it out. They get a bunch of people seem to like Chris Pratt for some reason. People like and then they just make this thing and put it up, and then thousands and thousands of people watch it.
Yeah.
And that's great. I'm glad. Actually, I'm not glad. I have no opinion on that. But Play-Doh, I was just watching something truly original. I was like, there was this one thing where like 3 people were all wearing one t-shirt and like making this giant person, and they're moving to this amazing music. And Aneri and I were both like,
I was like, I can't, like, what? This is amazing.
Never catch Chris Pratt doing that.
No.
no,
Well, people don't-
no,
you know
he's
what
playing Garfield now. Who cast him as Garfield?
Garfield was good for what it's worth.
Oh, you saw it?
I enjoyed it.
Oh, okay. It's good.
Chris Pratt, we love you. I love Garfield. That's my favorite movie. I haven't seen it. I recently also went, one of the other things I recently went to that I loved, it was called Bimbo Tennis. And it was a live play on a tennis court in Santa Monica, which is honestly also a funny location for a play like that because Santa Monica is so square. But anyway, so we went to it, and the premise was there was a woman running for mayor, and one of her directives as mayor was going to be getting rid of the last remaining tennis court, and the bimbos were attached to the tennis court. So the whole play was about their petitioning against her taking away this tennis court. And so it was a bunch of people just dressed like bimbo tennis players, like protesting, and it was so weird, but it was so funny, and it was so good. And my friend that took me to it, his friend was the director for it, and she was talking to us after, and I think it was like their second or third day doing it. And I thought it was really good. afterwards she was telling us, she was like, this was honestly just a really big swing, but I wanted to try it. And I know it wasn't perfect, but did you guys like it? I'm like, that was amazing. Because it was so, everything down to the hairstyles and the outfits and the makeup and some of the singing and the way they were interacting with the crowd. Like literally we had folding chairs and we're sitting on the tennis court. It was weird.
Yeah.
But it was so different that it was a very memorable experience because I liked that it wasn't, it's this meets this.
It's unique.
It was unique.
Like specific to that space,
Mm.
right? And I don't know. I think theater in particular to me is like if I'm doing a show about a tennis court that I'm trying to either like get rid of or save, to be able to be like, oh, we could just do it on a tennis court.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you can put it up on its feet. It's very DIY.
Yeah.
It felt, and I liked this idea of taking a bigger swing because ultimately I think like, I don't know, the risk pays off because once you take that big risk, then nothing seems out of question. It's like, oh, 3 people in one t-shirt. Why not? Let's try it. I guess even with like, so Henry and his boyfriend, Ethan, host these salons where anybody can perform anything. And it's all about just workshopping things and creating community and not about, anything else other than that, which I think is beautiful. And I wrote this script called Yard Sale in a couple of weeks that it's really weird. It's like a group of improv students goes to a yard sale hosted by neighbors, and there was a bunch of conflict and a bunch of random rules that apply to the yard sale, like no wig, no entry. And so at the salon, I decided to just read part of it with Ethan. And he goes, should I go get my box of wigs for this? I was like, why do you have a box of wigs? And he was like, my mom messaged me and said, hey, there's a lady selling a box of wigs on Facebook Marketplace. Do you want to go buy them? And like, I don't know why, but that detail is just so funny.
Yeah. Ethan has always been a person that has access to lots of wigs.
Yeah. Like it was like, you have a box of wigs. Like, yes, even if we weren't doing this, I want you to go get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like this idea of, maybe like in a way, I think what I have been, as I go on my own journey of exploring my queerness, and it is a little bit more confusing, honestly, because I don't identify as gay or straight or any. I'm like, I think I just like people. I think so much of my exploration of my identity is also tied into just I've become more open to trying kind of anything because I'm like, why do we put these labels? Like, does anything matter? Can't we just like as humans try things? So, yeah. And so for me, I don't know how you feel about this, but I could probably guess. Like, I know it's Pride. But I have tried to go to stuff and I feel so disconnected from most like big WeHo events. I'm like, I just like don't think this is for me, but I can't quite put my finger on why. Mm-hmm.
I just haven't been going just because I don't like being like under the sun for a long time in huge crowds of people drinking a lot. So you don't
like frat parties or football games.
Yeah, those are the reasons why I'm like proud to be queer, and I'm happy that people do put up with being in the sun and all that and drinking a lot and I know that there's so many elements to Pride. If there was a Pride event that was like hosted in a forest in like Vancouver. And everyone was just kind of like drinking seltzers. I would go to that one.
That sounds like a dream.
Yeah.
And like maybe reading poetry.
Yeah. I would be really excited to show my pride at the Vancouver Forest.
Such a lesbian. Yeah.
It's been said before.
That is not what I thought you were going to say.
It's been said many times.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what any of it's supposed to mean. And then I think the added layer of being both in my 30s and then also not white, it all just feels, I'm like, I don't know what's for me, but a lot of lesbian spaces are also really white. And then also like not super bi-friendly, right? They don't really like it because they're like, oh, you'll probably end up with a guy. Or, there's like a stigma still.
Type thing.
Yeah, so you have to be so, I don't want to say careful, but like sometimes I feel just a little lost when I try to force it. So maybe I'm like, I just gotta like be here.
Have there been any queer spaces that you've gone to where you're like, oh, this is awesome? I feel welcome here. Oh, thanks.
Yours, I think, You know, this is funny that I'm going to say this, but like a year and a half ago, I went to this South Asian matchmaking convention in Chicago, kind of in seriousness, but kind of as a bit. And they had an LGBTQIA plus like speed dating room just for people who are not straight. And the whole conference was 1,000 people, but the community of people at the queer speed dating was like, I think there was 15 of us.
Wow.
Like it was very small. And the organizer of the conference actually called me a few weeks before it to be like, do you know any more people that would want to apply? Or we just haven't gotten very many applicants. But I think as a result of that, we all got along pretty well. And it was like more intimate. And I don't get the sense that anybody was looking to just like find a wife or a husband. It was more just like, hey, I'm just like looking for a connection. And I'm still friends with some of the people I met in that smaller room to this day.
Wow.
So that was interesting. And then one of my friends sent me an invite for a South Asian specifically a queer lesbian South Asian event at the end of this month. So I'm going to look at that, but I'm trying to think like.
When we first met, we talked about you doing something at Bodega eventually.
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that. I know I haven't had like the mental space to even. I mean, honestly, even the 2 queer Indian girls I'm interviewing or talking to after this, it wasn't like a space, but I met them at a play I was at a few weeks ago. It was interesting. The play was actually, it was about a woman who's a mom who has like memory loss, and her daughter is pregnant. And the play was just kind of about the relationship of this mom to her husband, and then also her relationship to her daughter who's pregnant, and how she keeps forgetting things, and like how it kind of affects all of their interpersonal relationships. But what was really interesting about the play was the 2 parents are like, their real ethnicity is they're white, but then their daughter is Indian. She's played by an Indian woman, and then her husband is white. But I like that they never make that a thing. They're never like, oh, is this believable? Even though they're different ethnicities, they kind of just let it be. And so after the play, they did a panel about like, it was like Asian American Pacific Representation Month. And so they did a whole panel about how true inclusivity is, like how when you don't really have to talk about it. And so I met these 2 women at that play. And I think the nature of the play and then meeting them there, for some reason, I felt like we had a shared language immediately, if that makes sense. Because they're artists. They were at this play that I found really interesting because it wasn't so on the nose. And then also we were just all speaking really fast. And I was like, I do think there's like this intersection between like people who are kind of neurodivergent and queer. I feel like there's sometimes, especially for women, like an overlap there. And there was something about the way we were speaking where I was like, oh, these are like my people. So it was interesting. But I'm still exploring what that means.
Yeah.
Say it was sapphic.
Well, I didn't want to fuck them. Maybe. I don't know. I'm still figuring out what that means. But they were just like really funny. And they're both, I mean, they're younger. One of them's Gen Z. So I feel like even in that, they tend to be more like open.
Yeah.
It's like a whole thing.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah. How do you, well, I mean, your boyfriend is Gen Z, so you must experience that all the time.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite parts about that element is there are things that subconscious things that restrict how I live or express myself that he doesn't relate to at all. I've like let go of a lot of them. Mostly like he's so much less concerned about like appearing professional, I guess. Like I feel like the idea of what being professional is like changing with the generations. Like it's like how you have like when I would perform like in college, like you have to wear like a button-up shirt and like tuck in your shirt into like nice slacks with like shiny shoes or whatever. And now that I would never, from Express, I would never wear that now. But I used to for my performances when I'm music directing, I'd be like, okay, I have to like have my crisply ironed black shirt. And now I've found like really comfy clothes that like look cool on stage, but are comfy. And I don't feel like I'm like, they feel like more like me. And I don't feel like I'm getting my first communion or something. So, and that's like the influence of Ethan, and I think just the Gen Z in general. Like they're being like,
totally.
why are we like dressing like this still? It's so uncomfortable, and why are people spending so much money on this shit? And
like all those women's brands that were like when women who are like still the white feminist girl boss culture wear the pink blazers, I'm like, are you doing a bit? Like, is this a bit? It's like there was this episode of 30 Rock where this woman looks at Liz Lemon, like Tina Fey, and she goes, oh, I didn't realize the end game of feminism was dressing like Dennis the Menace.
oh, that's hilarious.
Like I think even for me in the exploration of like more writing and storytelling and my own style, I've experienced that too of like, I'm like, why am I like wearing this stuff that is so stiff?
Yeah.
I like your tattoo.
Oh, thanks. My fish. Yeah. And what else does Ethan teach me? Or does Gen Z teach me? I don't know. I think they're also less, because they're more open to like the spectrum of gender and sexuality. That kind of applies to many areas for them. And so they're less like scared or intimidated by like the man,
Yeah.
like that's less of a concept for them. Whereas for us, like, I feel like we grew up like,
Fear the man.
yeah. And that they're kind of like, the man's stupid. And it's cool.
I like it.
Yeah. Do you feel that like when you engage with them?
Them?
Younger people, I mean.
Yeah, I think I was literally thinking about this when I was like talking to myself in the mirror this morning. I had this phrase, like I think this in my head sometimes when I see certain people. I'm like, oh, it's giving millennial. When I went through my last breakup and then kind of re-entered the world, and I started going on dates with and even just hanging, you get exposed to so many more people when you're single, right? So I interacted with a lot more people that are Gen Z, and I feel like it taught me like even something simple like the fact that color clashing and style clashing is now seen as powerful. Just like you don't have to do it a certain way. And the less that you seem like you're trying to be something, the cooler it is. I feel like that gave me permission to just like be.
Yeah.
And why would Gen Z trust the system? Like, think about what the last few years have been like.
Yeah.
It's been them like so many Gen Z, they were like in college when the pandemic started and staring at a black screen, listening to like some teacher drone about something boring.
Right.
They're not thinking like, yeah, this is working.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
like, this is like completely broken.
Yeah, Gen Z, like there were kids in high school when Donald Trump was president. Imagine like being in high school and having like that type of person leading your country.
Yeah, they're probably like you. And I think what's also really fascinating is I feel like boomers and even Gen X, they kind of hate on millennials, or they think we're like stupid or lazy or this or that. But I feel like what's so fascinating about millennials is that we don't say that about Gen Z. We're like, yeah, I mean, they're better. Yeah. Which is like pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of us.
Yeah.
That's a better way to be.
We kind of are more self-aware. And then the other weird thing going on in my generation, specifically with women, is like a lot of people are getting divorced. And what I'm starting to experience with a lot of my girlfriends who are mid-30s and that's happening is like, again, all of a sudden you're in this new world and you thought you would have all these things figured out. Like you thought you would have a house and children and a family and all these things. And if those things haven't happened, in a way, there's permission to figure out what you might actually want. And I feel like women, that's never been a thing for women. And that also coincides with my generation is the first generation where a lot of women have just frozen their eggs. So then you're also like, I guess I have options. I'll just like do it later or not at all. And that's like also interesting because we're the first generation that's like talking about that. So I don't know what things look like, but I'm hosting 2 divorce parties this year. So
what does that mean?
Something very different for each person. For my cousin who got divorced and has 3 children, I was actually my idea, and I asked her, I was thinking so much about how we put all this effort into planning weddings, but her getting divorced was actually like a big like accomplishment for her, right? So I'm getting people together, probably at a coffee shop or something, like her women friends, and we're gonna like each read her letters or do like a spoken word type thing about just honoring her journey of basically
How I
leaving her
feel
marriage.
About you, I'm proud of you. For
Like, I'm proud of you.
Mm.
And like, we treat it like it's this tragedy, but because I've been so exposed to her stuff throughout the divorce, I'm like, I'm just like really proud of you. And I want to be able to honor that. Another friend who's getting divorced, she wants more of a party for now in Jamaica, which is a whole thing why it's Jamaica. But I'm curious to see how what she wants evolves with where she's at in her mind space. If that makes sense. Like, she definitely seems to want more of like a traditional party.
Uh-huh.
But we'll see. I don't know. They both asked me
Whoa.
if I would do it. And I was like, I love that. Like, that's the feeling.
You love that you have two different people, have seen like Aneri should
like Aneri would be good at this.
Yeah. I totally get that.
Why do you think?
I think you are one of the least judgmental people, because most people are just have a lot of baggage about divorce or are judgmental about it. And you are someone that's the same reason that you hung out with gay men when you were a teen or in your 20s, because you're not judgmental. So we're like, oh, you're not going to judge me? Cool. Will you host my divorce party?
Yeah, right. Whereas like, I sometimes feel like when my women friends are getting married, it's like so weird how weddings are also so gendered. It's like bachelor party. I'm like, why can't I just celebrate with the people I'm close to? Whatever. It's a whole different topic. But I feel like with weddings, I was always kind of insecure about like, oh, why didn't she ask me to be maid of honor or this or that? But I'm like, oh, now that we're in this phase, everyone's like, actually, which is really funny.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's really specific. And I also think, again, I think divorce parties are somewhat new to just the time we're in. I don't think that used to be a thing.
I've never heard the term before.
No, me neither. Until this year. I don't even know even calling it a divorce party feels like the wrong thing. I don't know what it is.
I've heard the term divorce party before. Like, I think some of this is like people didn't have access to divorce until a certain point, right? And I think since divorce became a thing, it's been something that's been liberating for women. I think we're seeing it more and more now. But like the idea of celebrating, like rather than being like, oh my God, I got married, or oh man, I got divorced. It's like, no, like this was a difficult process for me to go through. I'm on a better side of it because I actually wanted to dissolve my marriage, right? So how can I make that into a positive? And I feel like that's the thing that like you immediately were like, we're gonna all read letters like affirming you, right, and supporting you. Like those are the types of moments where again, like you're building community. I think that's why people go to you,
right? Because people know that I'm not. I guess they know that I'm not tied to traditional norms around community. Like it's just a vibe, and maybe you know what I've seen happen with friends who get divorced is like, if they used to be part of some kind of like extremely heteronormative circle, they no longer feel like they're part of that because they've done this thing. So they're like, oh my God, who's my actual support system versus who was just kind of fine with me when I was doing all of the traditional things. Yeah. And those are probably different. What do you like about creating together? Or do you like it?
Yeah, I do. I love it.
Probably ask.
I love it. No, I think when you're creating with someone, you just need someone who, or for me, someone who's able to just keep both people in my ideal situation need to be like a fountain of ideas constantly and not be like too precious about anything that we land on, like just be able to keep things moving and keep building and talking. It's kind of like having a good improv partner. Yeah. Yes. And a lot of people are not like that. A lot of people are like, okay, we found this. Now we have to stick with this plan and see it through to the end. Yeah. And that is a way to get things done, but it's not how I like to work.
So what are you most excited about for like the rest of this year, for like your next year in LA?
I'm most excited about releasing an album that I've been working on for like a year, and I think it'll come out in September. And I'm just excited to put out something that is like, this is me, this represents my experience of life from the past few years and right now, and I've never done that before in that way. And so I'm excited to do that, and I want to tell the world like, this is this is the frequency I'm planning on vibrating on, or this is the starting point for it. So that's what I'm excited about.
That's awesome.
For this year.
What genre of music is it? You on the guitar? Is you on the piano?
I'm playing piano, guitar, and woodwinds, and accordion, and it's like dreamy folk rock is what I'm calling it.
I'm excited to hear it.
Thanks.
I can't wait.
What about you?
I only had one goal this year. Not only one, but this was my overarching statement that I think about almost every day, which is I want to speak from a deeper register. Like I want to speak honestly about myself and my life and just in general.
Whoa.
So there's obviously stuff I want to get out there that I've been working on for quite a few years, like my documentary and this podcast and Lonely Girl, the show. But the biggest thing that matters to me is that everything feel really honest. And so I'm hoping, maybe that's not the same thing as like the release of something, but I don't know that I've ever done that. So I'm trying to do that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Is it? Feels so simple, but.
My friend Lulu does similar goals. Like she'll say, okay, this year I'm going to focus on the word confident. And her intention was to just like literally like think about the word confidence all year and see what that effect has on her. And she does that every year for different ways and styles. And I think it really works for her.
Yeah. And I usually every year have had more of a traditional goal, but I don't want to be tied to the outcome, I guess. I would like to be tied to the consistency of and authenticity of voice, but not necessarily the outcome, because I think that will set a stronger foundation for me.
Outcomes are also outside your control.
Yeah. And so much of the stuff I've been working on it feels like, besides actually this, this video podcast series I'm excited about, because the other two things I've been working on, the documentary, the show, the Lonely Girl show, they feel like slightly longer term goals. But I'm excited to work on something that, even if it's a little scarier, that I can put out more consistently and to experiment with, like, how do I want to tell a story? And
get comfortable with your voice.
Get comfortable with my voice. So get comfortable with my voice. It's a good goal.
And I like how you said deeper register. And what I first thought you meant like literally like physically like speaking lower. But symbolically that is what you mean.
Yeah,
like speaking
kinda.
more connected to like your roots and like
who I am.
Yeah.
And I find the more I do it, people like pick up on it. They're like, wow, this is like, I don't know. It's like an interesting, it's interesting interacting with people I've known for a long time and then pick up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool. I know I should have like more. Not should have more. That's not a thing, but.
No, that's huge.
Well, you know what it is? I see people, look, we live in LA. We see a lot of people putting out their creative work. And I've observed that so many times somebody can be working really hard at something, but then even when they put it out there, they're so hard on themselves. Like, oh, I could have sold out this, or I could have sold more albums. Or I'm like, I think it has to just be enough that you did it. And then that's advice I'm trying to give myself too.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said about the outcome, if you're only focused on the outcome, then you're being completely not present up until then.
Yeah.
You're just like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe we've been friends for 14 years.
It's wild.
And re-met on a very different plane.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like we never got totally disconnected.
No.
Like it was never a time like, oh, I used to know this person named Aneri.
How is that possible?
I think it's because of the type of people we are. That's just the style of friendships we have. Like I have other friends who like, I love them, would go out of my way to do something for them at any moment, but I haven't talked to them in a year.
Yeah, that's true.
It just happens. And then maybe suddenly I'll be living in the same city as that person and we'll be hanging out all the time. That's my style.
Pick up where you left off. Friendships.
But I think it takes a certain kind of energy to pull that off without it feeling, because I have certain friends where we haven't spoken in a year. I'm like, I think that friendship might be over. But I think
But
it is. It's like a strange thing where you're like, if we speak again, I don't know. It's going to be probably a little bit strange.
Yeah.
And of course I could be wrong about that, but I do think I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel like there was a period where we'd see each other every like 3 years, and it was as if we had seen each other the day before.
It was like, love you, what's up?
Yeah, truly.
Love you, comma, what's up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
funny.
is ideal for me.
Yeah, me too. And also just somebody that has the emotional capacity to hold that kind of like ongoing energy flow, I guess.
Yeah.